Now, the second thing that he said over and over again, and it's amazing that nobody, again, stood up and said, well, it actually isn't amazing. Again, I lived in and I remember what it's like, and I know it would be very difficult right now to stand up at a meeting and say, Stewart, you need to pack your bags and leave. But one thing he said a few times at the grace meeting was, I taught error. I missed grace. I taught error for 25 years. Now that would have meant from 1989, subtract 25, it's basically the entire existence of the group. And the precious FF time, he's saying that was error as well. I think Neil met with him at one point, had coffee with him, and Neil asked him about his teaching, the true interpretation, figurative language, all that. And Stewart's reply was, it was a bill of goods, it was a pack of lies. Now, are we willing to accept Stewart at its word? Yeah, at his word, should we simply say, you said it, and therefore, because you said it, we're going to use your own words and basically boot you? I mean, that makes common sense, but again, we're not dealing with common sense. We're dealing with belief. And Stewart has been able to get in and teach current members what to believe about him, instead of them going to their Bibles and also listening to the Spirit and having the Spirit open their eyes to what is true. They're taking Stewart's word for it. But as far as teaching error for 25 years, right there, that is grounds for dismissal. A bishop is supposed to be an apt teacher. Stewart said at the meeting that he was a false teacher. No, excuse me. He says he's not a false teacher, he's not a fraud, just a poor one. Okay, let's do that again. He's not a false teacher, he's not a fraud, he's just a poor teacher, as in he taught poorly. Where in Scripture does it allow any bishop or deacon or any person in church leadership to be a poor teacher of Scripture, a poor teacher of the way of God? And the fact that he said the word error, he said it. He taught error for 25 years. John the Apostle, in his letters, talked about the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. He didn't talk about that middle section where you've got a spirit of truth, but you teach poorly. You're either teaching the truth or you're teaching error. Stewart, by his own admission, said, I taught error. So he needs to be dismissed. As far as his own behavior now, like what was he and what is he now? I think it's evident what he is, at least to former members of his group that are outside his group. Whether or not he is a Christian, it doesn't matter. I guess you can say, I need to know how to pray for him, that he become a Christian or that he stop backsliding and return to God. Okay. The truth is that whether or not he needs to become a Christian or he needs to return to God, he needs to be dismissed from that office that he holds. There's no scripture that supports what he's doing right now. He's living off the brothers and sisters. He has a considerable amount of money in his own personal bank account. I believe the mansion in Florida, he may have not used church money. I think he may have purchased it himself. I'm not sure. 162, I think, was recently sold. I don't know where Stewart is. I think he's still in Florida right now. He has sisters caring for Gail. He seems to think it's okay to have a traveling companion, much like the way Gail was traveling with him to the centers in his airplane and staying overnight with him while he was still married to Shirley. Now it appears that he thinks it's okay, and apparently Tim McAndrews agrees with him, that it's okay for him to be escorted by a sister in her 30s, and he's in it pushing 80, around the fellowships, and nobody's saying anything. Now, whether or not he is actually going to pull off getting married, I don't know. And so it really does come down to belief. Um, that's what makes up a cult. Again, people outside a group will say, how could you fall for that? How could you believe such a thing?" And I would say that Stewart was good at fooling teenagers, and he did it in 1971. He took over. What were his motivations? I'm not going to get into that. The mistake people make about Stewart is to try to be absolutely 100% accurate about him. If you fail in one point, if you make one mistake or one misspeak, then Stewart can discount everything you say. For instance, with the Message Copy House, they called him a false prophet. Stewart jokingly said, "How can I be a false prophet when I never claimed to be a prophet to begin with?" Well, I am now giving him a designation based on what he said about himself. He took Jesus' place, therefore, he is a false Christ. He taught error for 25 years, and therefore he is a false teacher, according to Scripture. He needs to be dismissed. The church board needs to get together and remove him. And if they think that they're just going to wait for him to die, and then Kevin's just going to assume the throne, that can happen. But I would say that God would not be pleased, and I don't think God would bless the next leader of the Church of Bible Understanding, because that person and the brethren that are currently there are not right now serving the truth in the matter of Stewart Traill, and therefore how do they expect to select and appoint a pastor for their church who's not even following the standards himself? And I'll get one last chapter in, something to say to the current members.